Hello, folks. This is Developmental Psychology, and we are considering today part one of infancy. So pull your PowerPoints out. After you're finished watching this video, hit the like or unlike button, hit the subscribe button, and then you'll get notices if you hit the button that notifies you of upcoming videos. All right, let's get into it. So, a few definitions. We use the word neonate to mean the first 28 days, or the first month. It's from the Latin newborn, neonatus. And the term refers to both full term and not full term, that is, premature deliveries. So the word infant, though, comes from the Latin before speech, unable to speak or speechless. And so it generally is applied from 1 month to about a year, somewhere in there. In developmental psychology, we call that the pre-linguistic year before words, pre-linguistic. The word baby is a non-specific term, and it could refer to almost anything. In fact, adults call each other baby sometimes. Hey, baby. So, at birth, babies are learning machines and reflexive to beat the band. Reflexes are automatic, neurological, innate responses to environmental stimuli that are derived from a long history of evolution and are connected to directly survival. They metabolize, they react, they learn. It's amazing. Now, the most important thing, and this is just introductory, is we'll get into this in great detail later, but the most important thing to remember is that they begin to evaluate at an emotional level the environment in which they are cared for. So either that environment gives them what they need, food, water, warmth, rest, safety, security, and cuddles, or it doesn't. Now, there's a continuum, sure, but let's talk about the polar opposites. On the one hand, the environment is able to give them those things. It will develop trust at an emotional level that the environment can provide some of what they need as they move forward in life. That's good. At the other end of the extreme, again, there's a continuum, but at the other end of the extreme, they will not trust the environment, and this actually can cause very severe problems as children move forward regarding several different things. They study their hands, they study their feet, they study everything around them, they follow moving objects, including the large things. They explore things with their mouths, and they cannot have yet a memory, a picture in their brain of what they see. So once something that they see in front of them no longer is there, they cannot remember it. Cool, huh? Pretty interesting. Now, how do we study newborns? Well, we study them in a lot of different ways. We study their orienting reflex, so they'll pay greater attention to things that are new or what we call novel. Okay, they will have a greater fixation upon a thing that's new. They'll just stare. Like if you're making noises you've never made before to a baby, they'll just stare at you because it's all new. We can use what's sometimes called a magic binky. That's what I call it, I guess. It's wired to a computer, and it registers how fast and how hard babies are sucking on the binky. And when the sucking rate goes up, and it's stronger, then it's something new and different. We can look at brain waves to see whether they're seeing something new or something similar. It's just that we can watch their interactions and see how safe they feel with those that they know versus with strangers and so on. We can learn a lot, but we can't ask them questions yet. That comes later. In terms of vision development, we see up to about 9 months. Babies have mature vision about 9 months. We know that in terms of speech development, the brain centers for speech development go anywhere up to about 3, but the first year is critical. Emotional development, well, that's further out in terms of the second year, but actually it is intense within the first 9 months or so. in terms of math and logic skills within the brain. Now, we're not talking about what they can do, but we're talking about brain development. The first 9 months, first 6 months, 9 months, all the way out to 2.5 years or so. Social attachment and social skills, that goes all the way out to 4, but the first 1.5 to 2 years in terms of the brain is critical. Motor development, we can see in the womb, so we know there's motor development, of course. But that goes all the way up until about 4, 4.5, 5, and the first year or so is the most critical. Peer social skills in terms of brain development really doesn't kick in until about 3, and 3 to 4 is the most critical. That goes all the way through 6. And then language centers. That really is about a little bit before birth and on all the way up to about 3 or 4. And then the first year or so is the most critical part of brain development. Okay? We want to talk again about critical periods. We talked about this in terms of teratogens, but I want you to be reminded of what this is. This is where the brain is set up neurologically by virtue of genetics to acquire a function during a limited period of time. Okay? And if the key experiences in the environment do not occur during a critical period, then that function that is open during that time may not develop, may be partially developed. It depends. Okay? I have a couple of videos I thought you might like to see. One is a prodigious 1-year-old and another is a baby laughing at a dog just for fun. And those are in your PowerPoint, so please watch those. I believe they are hyperlinked. If they're not, copy and paste the address in any case. Now for vision, babies are born with very poor vision, somewhere around 2400, some worse than that. Their peripheral vision is narrow. They can detect large moving objects that move across their field of vision. And their focal length, in other words, the distance at which they actually can see that is in focus, is about, well, I can't really show it to you. It's about 20 centimeters. Do you know why? Because that's the distance from a baby that's nursing to mommy's face. And that means that recognizing mommy's face is of great survival importance. 1 to 2 day olds can discriminate emotions on a mother's face. How about that? 3 months old can identify parents' faces. 2 months old have mature color vision. 4 to 5 months old, depth perception and distance. And again, at 8 to 9 months old, that's when they develop 20/20 vision, unless they have a problem with eyesight. In terms of hearing, this is well developed at birth, and it may in fact be, and likely is, the earliest link to one's mother. They orient to sounds. They are alarmed by loud, sudden sounds. They respond to changes in their heart rate to those loud sounds, and even in the womb that happens, actually. They prefer their mother's voice to other people's voices, human voices to other human voice to non-human voices, and we can tell that by using the magic binky. In terms of smell, they turn away from unpleasant odors, and that has survival implications because finding an odor unpleasant could mean that it has pathogens associated with it, bacteria or viruses, or in some ways be poisonous, so turning away would limit the chance to acquire those pathogens. Babies prefer mom's breast pad, and we can test that by taking a cloth and rubbing it on a woman's breast pad, and then including 9 other of the 10, let's say, rubbed on different women's breast pads, and then present each one to the baby, and the baby starts going wild when they get going wild. They react nicely and strongly when they smell their mothers, and the reverse is true. The mothers can identify the baby's odor. You can rub the baby in a cloth along with 9 others, and the mom can generally pick out which one is her child. Now, in terms of taste, they prefer, obviously, sweet to sour, bitter, or salty. And again, this has survival implications because bitter tastes are often associated with toxic foods in the wild. And we're talking about the vast evolutionary history of humans. We're not talking about the last, 5,000 years. And in fact, babies can be adapted to the mother's food tastes and cultural palate while even in the womb, and then later drift towards that in spite of being adopted out. We know that breastfeeding is superior to bottle feeding in most ways, but not all. Breastfeeding does a lot of good things, like passes on antibodies to the child. It is useful to protect the child for things like SIDS and asthma and obesity and diabetes and all sorts of things. It's the skin to skin contact that breastfeeding provides that is very useful for security for the child and for bonding for both for the mom and from the child. In the mother, breastfeeding is preventative to some degree. At least it lowers the risk for ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, breast cancer. It controls weight to some degree, and it's very convenient because the milk is at the right temperature always. Now, there are challenges because if the mom has HIV, she can't breastfeed because HIV is found in breast milk and can pass it to the baby. Some medicines or medical treatments, she can't breastfeed. And it does take a commitment. She has to be able to pump when she's not there and someone else is caring for the baby. So that's not convenient. Now, formula feeding is convenient because anyone can feed the baby, but that's not providing skin-to-skin bonding kinds of advantages. Sometimes babies need special formulas. They can't tolerate just any old formula. It does not give you does not pass to the baby advantages like a reduction in the things like SIDS and diabetes and asthma and those sorts of things. It doesn't give them any antibodies for particular kinds of infections. But again, anyone can feed the baby, and that's convenient, isn't it? Okay. So basically, we want to say that breastfeeding is better overall, by a darn sight. Now, breastfed babies are most common in the Pacific Northwest and West, along with most of the mountain states, and much of New England. Okay? Breastfed babies, less than 30%, are in the Deep South and all the way up to West Virginia. And that has to do with a number of factors, one of which is poverty and the ease with which companies provide the first month or two or three or whatever it is for free formula, and that's not by accident. Okay. Let's talk about touch. Touch is a fundamental communicator of the environment and your place in it. So if you're getting warm, nurturing, soothing touch, it's a very, very, very good thing for brain development and for psychological processes. And if you're going to get a secure attachment in infancy, touch is required. Regular, day-long touch, intermittent but frequent. Now think about this. You're born with X number of receptor cells on the surface of your skin. And so as an adult, do you like having your head rubbed, your shoulders rubbed, your hands held, and having your feet rubbed or something like that? Well, babies have the same number of receptors, and as they grow, they move apart. So if you like how it feels, imagine what it's like 2, 3, 4 times as babies would perceive it to be. Much more intense for babies. Much more intense. You ever seen those commercials, the films of babies responding to having their heads rubbed or their hair washed? Yeah, that's why. Let's talk about temperament. So there are basically 4 kinds of temperament. Now, temperament is genetically controlled. You don't create your temperament. Your genetics creates your temperament. And it's pretty stable. And what temperament does is it creates a set of natural reactions that we have to the environment, particularly places we've never been before. So what we all wish we were easy temperament babies and all the way through adulthood, because you keep the temperament throughout your life. Easy babies are happy, they're rhythmical in their biological functioning, so they sleep, feed, eliminate regularly. They're very adaptable to stress and changes. That's about 40% of babies. Again, I wish it was 100%, but it's not. Slow to warm up babies have a mildly intense reaction, low activity, somewhat low to adapt. They have a mild negative reaction to new things. That's about 15%. But after a time, when they've been in an environment, they warm up to that. Okay? That's about 15%. And so, those two together, not so bad. 55% or so. Then we have the difficult temperament children. These are about 10%. Thank goodness it's that small. I wish it was 0. These kiddos are frequent and intense negative emotions, irritable, crying, very negative responses to new situations, very slow to adapt to change, and they're very biologically irregular. A third of all children have some mixture of these. It's too hard to tell what they are. Now let's talk about temperament and adjustment. So what we want is what we call a goodness of fit. A goodness of fit between the environment and the temperament of the child. And there's a lot of tension when there's not a good fit. So once you know or can figure out what the temperament of a child is, you can orient the mechanisms and the flavor of the environment. For example, if you've got a difficult child and you have to go shopping, the baby's coming with you. Let's say you've got a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old. Then you can prepare them for that. What's it going to be like? And you can do a mock kind of exercise for that. You can even drive to the store and then sit in the car and then drive back, and then there are a number of ways to increase the goodness of fit. With easy babies, there's no need to do this because they adapt so easily to change. If we look at the way infants sleep, then we see that at 1 month, they sleep about 8 hours nocturnally and then take about 4 naps of about 2 hours apiece. And that number of naps goes down, and the number of nocturnal hours goes up, so that at 1 year you've got 2 naps. The first one occurs after about 10 hours of nocturnal sleep. It's about an hour long, and then the second one is later in the afternoon, and that's a couple hours long. By 5-year-olds don't take naps, and they sleep about 11 hours a night. This kind of information, these kinds of charts that you'll see in your material are very interesting to use to normalize, for parents and physicians and others to know what's normal and what's not, and to compare how your baby is doing with what's normal. Because if you're vastly out of whack, then we would want to take a closer look and see what's going on, right? Yeah. I have a number of short clips for you to look at. Please do that. They refer to the reflexes. I haven't included all the reflexes, but I've included the ones I'm about to mention. The first one is a rooting reflex. That's where the baby, turns their head and opens their mouth in the direction of having their cheek touched. I'll get back to you.